My name is Alara Finch, and I was 30 years old the night my family decided I didn't need to come home with them. They left me at the mall on Christmas Eve, and for a few minutes I truly believed it was an accident. That's how it always starts. Something small, something explainable, something you can tuck into a pocket and tell yourself not to overthink. The parking lot was almost empty, the kind of empty that makes sound travel farther than it should. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. A cart rolled loose in the wind and kissed a snowbank with a dull clatter. I stood near the exit with 2 paper bags cutting into my fingers, groceries they'd asked me to grab because I was already out. One bag had begun to tear. Cream leaked through the bottom, slick and cold against my palm. The wine bottles chimed softly every time I shifted my weight, a fragile sound, like something warning me it could break if I wasn't careful. My phone buzzed, a voicemail. My mother's voice came through in a whisper, tight and hurried, like she didn't want to be overheard by the night itself. "Oh no, we thought you were in the other car." That was it. No question. No pause. No. "Where are you?" "No. Stay there. We'll come back." The line went dead. I didn't react the way people expect. I didn't cry. I didn't shout her name into the cold. I didn't even blink. I just stood under the soft yellow halo of a street lamp, listening to the wind push that cart again, the sound scraping something hollow in my chest. I'd told them earlier my car was in the shop. The brakes had failed. I'd even texted the receipt, a photo with the timestamp still visible. My sister Jenna had said she'd swing by after picking up the boys. I nodded when she said it, said thank you, and hated myself for how automatic it sounded. I started walking. The slush soaked through my socks within minutes. Salt stung the backs of my ankles. Exhaust hung low in the air, sharp and metallic. My coat was thinner than I remembered, or maybe the cold had decided to be personal that night. I could feel the edge of the cranberry sauce container digging into my ribs with every step. According to my phone, it was a 58-minute walk. I didn't check again after that. Halfway home, my phone buzzed. Wrong thread, wrong recipient, right truth. Oh my gosh, it worked. We finally left her at the mall like we planned. I stopped walking. Snow gathered at the collar of my coat. I read it once, then again, the words rearranging themselves into something undeniable. My reply was simple. Brilliant. No punctuation, no emoji, nothing to soften it. I put the phone back in my pocket and kept moving. I reached my apartment just after 6:40. My apartment, not theirs. The radiator hissed like it was irritated to be awake. The air smelled faintly of burnt dust. I dropped the bags on the counter, peeled off my gloves, and sat without turning on a light. I opened my banking app first. The shared grocery account sat there, familiar and obedient. I froze it. $2,847.28. Locked. Then the home system. I disabled the shared access codes, removed their names, blocked all 4 phone numbers from the front door camera. I imagined the moment they'd realize it wasn't working. I didn't imagine their faces. The last thing was the tree. It wasn't mine, not really. I'd bought it, hauled it, set it up on their porch 2 weeks earlier because Dad's back still hurt and the boys had school. I borrowed my neighbor's car, the one I use when mine's in service, and drove over in silence. I didn't park. I didn't knock. I unplugged the lights, lifted the tree with the ornaments still on, tied it to the roof. No one came out. No one noticed. They were inside, laughing, probably opening the wine I'd carried, probably assuming I'd show up tomorrow with dessert, with apologies, with the familiar relief of forgiveness they never had to earn. I didn't. But that wasn't the story yet. This was just the opening move. I didn't go to their house after that. I didn't answer the calls that started coming in. I made tea, sat by the window, and watched the lights blink across someone else's porch. For the first time in years, I let myself remember not just what they'd done that night, but everything that had led up to it. I got my first job the summer after I turned 15, not because I wanted independence, because someone had to cover the gap. The diner smelled like burnt coffee and grease that never quite left your clothes. I worked 4 nights a week, 6 once school started. My manager called me reliable. I never told him it was because missing a shift meant missing rent. That fall, I bought my own winter coat. Jenna got a North Face. I wore mine until the zipper split. At 16, I started helping with groceries, then the phone bill, then gas. Jenna needed braces. I offered to split the cost. Mom said I was sweet. Jenna smiled in the Christmas card photo. I paid for that too. At 17, I skipped prom for an extra shift. At 18, I learned what it felt like to be useful but invisible. College wasn't a dream, it was an exit plan. I took in-state tuition and a commuter pass, worked mornings at a warehouse, classes in the afternoon, waited tables at night. I slept when I could. Jenna went to a liberal arts school 2 hours away. She came home after a year, said it was too stressful. Mom said she was listening to her body. Dad said he respected her boundaries. I stopped talking at dinner. No one noticed. By 21, I lived in a basement apartment with mold on the ceiling and a radiator that worked when it felt like it. I called it bohemian. That winter, Mom got pneumonia. The meds weren't covered. I paid for them over the phone. She called me a blessing. I learned what it cost to live inside that word. By 25, I was covering rent disguised as utilities, student loans stacked like quiet threats, Jenna's phone plan because she cracked the screen again. At 26, they started calling me stable. You can always count on her, Dad said once, like it was praise. They didn't know I chose groceries over a dental cleaning that month. By 27, Jenna moved back in with the dog she couldn't afford. He ruined the couch. I replaced it. No one asked me to. No one stopped me. I got a small promotion that spring. More hours. No benefits. I used the raise to fix their roof. I didn't live there anymore, but I kept calling it home. At 29, I took a weekend off. My first in years. No reception. 12 missed calls when I came back. The fridge broke. Eggs spoiled. The thermostat glitched. Jenna had an interview and couldn't handle the stress. I wired the money from a rest stop bathroom. No one said thank you. They said, I knew you'd come through. By 30, I managed their finances better than my own. I forgot my own dentist appointment. I canceled a quiet trip I'd been saving for. I told myself next year. And then there was the mall, the bags, the whisper, the plan I wasn't supposed to see. I didn't scream. I didn't beg. I didn't explain. I walked home, locked the doors they thought were still open, and let the night teach me something I'd been avoiding for decades. This was only the beginning. The night after the mall, I didn't sleep much. Not because I was upset. Upset implies movement, but because my body didn't know what to do without anticipation. For years, I'd slept lightly, tuned to the possibility of my phone lighting up with a need I hadn't met yet. A bill. A favor. A quiet emergency wrapped in a casual tone. That night, the silence felt wrong, like a limb missing. I lay there and replayed moments I'd filed away as normal, not traumatic enough to protest, not dramatic enough to name, just small enough to ignore. I remembered the way my mother used to say my name when she needed something. Soft, almost fond. Alara, you're so good with numbers. Alara, could you just check this real quick? Never. How are you holding up? Never. Do you need help too? Help only flowed one direction in our family, and I learned early which side I was on. At 15, I learned how to stretch a paycheck across 4 people without letting it show. At 16, I learned which bills could be late without getting shut off. At 17, I learned that if I stayed quiet long enough, people assumed I was fine. By 18, being fine had become my job. There were moments I almost noticed the imbalance, little flashes of awareness that fizzled out before they could become decisions. Like the Christmas Jenna forgot to buy gifts because she ran out of time, and I covered for her with things I'd picked up on my way home from work. Or the time Dad joked at dinner that I was the family's backup plan. Everyone laughed. I smiled too, because I didn't know what else to do with that information. When I moved into this basement apartment, my mother cried, not because I was leaving, but because she didn't know how they'd manage without me nearby. I reassured her. I always reassured her. I told myself it was love, not obligation, that kept me tethered. I told myself families took turns carrying weight, but the turns never came. Jenna's life unfolded in soft resets, new starts cushioned by understanding. When she quit school, when she left jobs, when relationships ended, there was always a narrative that explained why it wasn't her fault. Stress, healing, timing. I learned the language fluently. I used it on myself too. You're just tired. It's just this season. Things will even out. They didn't. By my mid-20s, my calendar was color-coded for other people's responsibilities. Bills due, prescription refills, school schedules, vet appointments. I could tell you the brand of almond milk my mother preferred and which wine my father complained about least. I knew Jenna's passwords because she forgot them constantly. I knew the sound her car made when it needed another repair she couldn't afford. What I didn't know was what I wanted. That question felt indulgent, almost rude. Wanting implied there was room for it. Every time I tried to step back, something happened. A sickness, a breakdown, a crisis that required me specifically. I told myself it was coincidence. I told myself I was needed. The truth, that I was convenient, took longer to settle. The praise didn't help. You're so strong. You handle things so well. We don't know what we'd do without you. Compliments like that are dangerous when you don't realize they're chains. I wore them proudly, even as they cut circulation. The worst part wasn't the money. It was the way my presence became conditional. I was welcomed when I arrived with solutions, tolerated when I arrived empty-handed. No one asked why I'd stopped talking at dinner. No one noticed when I left early or arrived late. I could disappear in plain sight as long as the lights stayed on and the fridge stayed full. By the time I turned 30, the pattern was so ingrained that the mall shouldn't have surprised me. They didn't forget me because they were careless. They left me because, in their minds, I would find my way back. I always had. Standing there with the groceries, reading Jenna's message, something finally aligned. Not anger, not even hurt. Recognition. The kind that rearranges things quietly, permanently. I thought about all the times I'd been stranded emotionally and figured it out on my own. The mall was just the first time it happened, literally. When I froze the accounts and took the tree, it wasn't revenge. It was muscle memory breaking. A reflex interrupted. I wasn't trying to teach them a lesson. I was testing something else. What would happen if I didn't come through? The answer didn't arrive right away. It never does. That night, as the city settled into its holiday hush, I understood something I'd avoided for years. I hadn't been part of the family. I'd been infrastructure, and infrastructure only matters when it fails. I turned onto my side, pulled the blanket higher, and let that truth sit with me. It didn't scream. It didn't accuse. It just waited, steady and undeniable, like the road home I'd walked alone. The first call came the next morning. I knew it would. I'd felt it in my bones the moment I woke up without dread. My phone buzzed on the nightstand while pale winter light crept through the blinds. Mom's name lit the screen. Not Mom, not Mama, just Mom. Practical, neutral, the way you label a utility company. I let it ring. That was new. When it stopped, there was no spike of guilt. Just a quiet curiosity, like watching a storm approach from a safe distance. I made coffee. I stood at the window. I watched my breath fog the glass and disappear. The voicemail came seconds later. Her voice was tight, rehearsed. Alara, call me when you get this. We need to talk. There's been confusion. Confusion. I smiled into my mug. By noon, there were 6 missed calls. 2 texts, one from Jenna. Why did you lock us out? This isn't funny. Dad's card declined at the grocery store. Not, are you okay? Not, where did you go? Just the malfunction report. I didn't answer. Instead, I walked. No destination, no checklist, just my boots on the pavement and my hands shoved into my coat pockets like I might find something there that belonged only to me. The city felt different when I wasn't rushing to fix it. Louder, sharper, more alive. At a bookstore, I stood in the fiction aisle for 20 minutes, reading first pages like I was allowed to start over as many times as I wanted. I bought one on impulse. I'd never done that before. Every purchase used to pass through an invisible filter. Is this necessary? Could this money help someone else more? That voice was quieter now, not gone, just unsure. By evening, the tone shifted. Dad called, then texted. Your mother's upset. You've made your point. Come home. Home. The word landed wrong. I typed and erased 3 responses before setting the phone down again. I wasn't ready to speak yet, not because I was afraid of confrontation, but because I knew exactly how it would go. They would talk at me, not to me. They would explain my feelings back to me until I doubted I'd had them at all. That night, I dreamed of fuse boxes in darkened rooms, of flipping switches that no longer responded, of standing in the quiet afterward, waiting for someone to notice the dark. They didn't. The next day, the messages turned practical. Mom, the internet's been shut off. Jenna, my rent is due. Dad, we need access to the savings. No apology, no question, just escalating consequences. That's when it hit me. The absence they felt wasn't me. It was the comfort I provided, the smoothness, the invisibility of effort. I was only missed as a function. And for the first time, I let them sit in the dark. On the 3rd day, Mom showed up at my apartment. I knew it was her before she knocked. She always knocked twice, impatient, like the door owed her access. I watched the wood tremble with the impact and felt steady. When I opened it, she scanned my face like she was checking for damage. "You look fine," she said, almost accusingly. "I am." Her mouth thinned. "We're worried." I stepped aside, but didn't invite her in. That small boundary felt like standing on the edge of a cliff, terrifying and exhilarating all at once. "Worried about what?" I asked. She sighed, the long-suffering kind. "About you acting out. This isn't like you." I waited. She filled the silence. Families don't do this to each other. Something in me finally clicked into place. Families don't leave people behind either, I said. Her eyes flickered. Not guilt, calculation. That was a mistake. No, I said gently. It was a pattern. She scoffed. You're being dramatic. I nodded. That's what people say when the truth inconveniences them. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The hallway light buzzed overhead. Somewhere, a neighbor's door slammed. Life, continuing. You're hurting us, she said at last. I met her gaze. I've been hurting for years. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. There was no script for this, no language for a version of me that didn't bend. Are you going to fix this? She asked. I took a breath, felt it fill my chest. Stay there. I'm not broken, I said. She left shortly after, shaking her head like she was walking away from a stranger. I locked the door behind her and leaned my forehead against the wood. My hands were shaking, not from fear, from release. Later that night, I transferred the last shared account entirely into my name, not out of spite, out of clarity. I wrote one message, kept it short. I'm taking space. I won't be managing things anymore. Please don't contact me unless it's about rebuilding something healthier. I didn't explain, I didn't justify, I didn't soften it, and the world didn't end. What followed wasn't peace, not right away. It was grief. A strange, hollow grief. For a role I'd played so well, I forgot it wasn't me. I mourned the version of myself who believed love was earned through exhaustion. But underneath the grief was something sturdier. Choice. For the first time, the quiet wasn't waiting for me to fill it. It belonged to me. And as I turned off the lights and crawled into bed, I realized something else. Infrastructure doesn't get to rest. People do. And I was finally off the clock. The silence didn't stay empty. It filled slowly, the way lungs do after you've been holding your breath for too long. At first it was uncomfortable. Too much room, too many hours without instructions. I kept reaching for my phone out of habit, thumb hovering where obligations used to live. There was nothing there, just weather updates and spam. I started noticing things I'd trained myself not to. The ache in my shoulders, how loud my thoughts were when no one interrupted them, how hunger felt when I wasn't timing meals around someone else's schedule. Rest wasn't restful yet, it was disorienting. On the fourth day, Jenna sent a voice note. I almost deleted it without listening. Almost. Her voice was brittle. Mom says you're being selfish. Dad says you'll come around. I don't know what to think. A pause. Then, quieter. I didn't realize how much you did. It wasn't an apology, but it wasn't nothing. I didn't reply, because acknowledgement without change is just another form of delay. I took a week off work, something I'd never done without justification or guilt. I slept late. I cooked meals that only I liked. I rearranged my apartment so the couch faced the window instead of the TV. Small rebellions, structural ones. One afternoon, I found a box I hadn't opened since moving in. Old notebooks, pay stubs, birthday cards with thank you notes I'd written to myself and never sent. In one journal, there was a list titled Things I'll Do When Things Calm Down. It was dated 8 years ago. I laughed. Then I cried. Then I crossed out the title and wrote a new one. Things I'm doing anyway. I signed up for a class. Nothing practical, no transferable skills, just something my hands could learn without needing to be useful. The first day I introduced myself without qualifiers. No oldest child, no the responsible one, no preemptive explanations. Just my name. It felt illegal. The family tried again 2 weeks later, this time together. A group message, carefully worded, like a ceasefire proposal. We want to talk, we miss you. I stared at it for a long time. Miss me or miss the lights staying on? I typed one sentence. I'm open to a conversation with boundaries and a neutral third party. There was no immediate response. That told me everything. Another month passed. The urgency faded. The crisis adapted. They found workarounds. Late fees got paid. Systems rerouted. The world proved something I'd never been allowed to test. They could survive without me managing it. And I could survive without being needed. One evening, my mother called from a number I almost didn't recognize. I answered before I could overthink it. Her voice was different, quieter, not broken, just stripped of authority. "I didn't realize how angry you were," she said. "I wasn't angry," I replied. "I was exhausted." Silence stretched. This one felt honest. "I don't know how to be your mother if you don't need me," she admitted. The truth landed softly between us. "I'm not asking you to stop being my mother," I said. "I'm asking you to stop being my manager." She didn't respond right away. When she did, there were no promises, just uncertainty. "I'll try," she said. It wasn't redemption. It wasn't reconciliation. But it was the first sentence that didn't assume I'd bend. We ended the call politely, carefully, like people learning a new language with the same mouth they'd used to shout. Later, alone, I realized something that surprised me. I didn't feel relieved. I felt whole. Not forgiven, not vindicated, just intact. I used to believe love meant staying until you were empty, that if you left, you proved you'd never belonged in the first place. Now I understood the quieter truth. Belonging that requires erasure isn't belonging, it's labor. That night, I turned off my phone completely. No one would need me before morning. No system would fail because I slept. As I lay in the dark, I thought back to the mall. The cold, the bags cutting into my palms, the automatic doors opening and closing without me. For a long time, that moment felt like abandonment. Now I see it differently. That was the first time the world didn't wait for me to catch up. And for once, I didn't run after it.